Hello again. Welcome back to our next episode of our podcast series. My name's Suzanne. I'm the brand ambassador for Nets International. And I am thrilled today because we have a very special guest who's going to be talking about a subject very dear to our hearts, education, AI, technology, automation. And I'm thrilled to announce our very special guest, Miss Ann Palmer, who is the CEO of Fig Tree International, is well renowned, should I say, in the UK for working with our head teachers, leadership teams within the education system. And thank you so much for coming. Welcome to our podcast series. And I'm really excited to be talking about AI and how impactful it is with schools and what you are doing to shape the future.
My absolute pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much for inviting me. This is going to be an incredible conversation.
And today I'm really thrilled to have you here today, and I know that you have been dealing with heads of departments, leadership, within the education system, and the role in technology and how that's shaping in schools today. So please let me know a bit more. Welcome again.
Absolutely, Suzanne. One of the things I say is that I've never left school. Whether I'm in love with schools, I don't know, but I've never left schools. My last 35 years have been working with schools and in schools, particularly around school leadership. So I've got a massive network of leaders, schools both in the UK and internationally that I support. And I support them in a variety of ways, but bringing in the leadership knowledge and the executive leadership knowledge that I've gained over the last few years in being a head teacher, in being a board member, in being a governor, in being a teacher. So I have that sort of, the way my brain thinks is always around the structures in education. So I do a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
I run leadership courses. I coach, I'm an executive coach for head teachers and colleagues around the world. I am into AI, which is very rare, but I am into AI. And at the moment, we're looking at conferences both in the UK. We've got a couple of conferences coming up in India and in the Middle East as well as being an author of a couple of books.
Yes, I was going to touch on that later,
Yeah.
But I also am aware that you have a very powerful voice in the podcast space.
Yeah.
So tell me where is it on most of the social media platforms? Yeah.
So the podcast you can access on most of the major podcast platforms.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of series out there at the moment. One is around leadership generally, which is called the A to Z of leadership. And the more recent podcast is around leading with AI. And really that is to maximize the quality of leadership that we have at the moment. And the audience stems from those that have no knowledge of AI, right through to those that are dabbling, right through to those that are perhaps more expert. So I'm doing that AI journey with them through the podcast, and also inviting guests throughout the series as necessary.
Okay, so let's sort of talk about the leadership in education today. You've worked with countless of leaders, and what would you say is the biggest mind shift or mindset you're seeing in education today in regards to AI?
Right. I think that schools are in a really interesting time in their development. They're moving from what we call instructional teaching right through to becoming system leaders. And I always say to leaders, you can be a leader in your own school, but actually we are not simply here to lead our schools. We're here to work within the system. And I think that's difficult for some people to acknowledge, but our young people depend on that. I think it's necessary at this time for school leaders to think how they can move from control to empowerment. Particularly in the UK system, we have a lot of measures around us, a lot of tick boxes that we have to comply with. But actually, true leadership is about being able to show creativity, being able to show innovation. And a school, that the word at the moment is flourishing. Lots of organisations are talking about to flourish. And actually, we can only flourish when those controls are taken away from us. I think, of course, we're in an environment where equity and inclusion is very high profile globally. And we have to ensure that as we move forward with things like AI, that there is equity in the system and that no leaders, no teachers, no children are left behind. And we saw that primarily in, say, when COVID struck, the children that had no access to technology were in a position where schools had to quickly try and get different appliances to them in order for them to access online teaching and so forth. So that equity piece, I think, is a vein that stems right the way through what schools are doing at the moment.
Okay, so obviously it's since... So post-pandemic, it is a rapidly changing environment. So how would you say AI and automation is reshaping the education system?
Now, this is just incredibly interesting. And of course, that's one of the reasons why we're here today. And getting that global view, I think, is really important for everybody, because some people will just go in to their workplaces and look at the daily practice. Some people are more visionary and will always keep their eye on what's going around globally. So let's take the UK view to start with. Schools are just incredibly busy. And, there's new specifications around inspections, for example, that leaders have to get their heads around. But whilst all of that is happening, we have to take a global view and look at what countries like the Middle East, what China, what India are doing around artificial intelligence. And a key factor within all of that is looking at the pressures that are located within the UK system. So, for example, if you speak to any organisations, a lot of them will mention workload issues, just the pressure of workload on teachers. And we know that over the last 2 years, for instance, over 80,000 teachers have left the profession. So that workload issue feeds directly into me saying to people, we can't wait to see what's happening globally. We need to be starting our AI journeys now, be it step by step, but we cannot simply say, let's see what everybody else is doing and stay behind, because the fundamental word of our character is leadership. We lead, we don't let AI lead us.
Yeah, so at NETS, we're really excited because AI and automation is, it's one of our core domains. So I know that we have, as big as a telco company that we are branching into this space where we want to give back to the community, and we feel that education is our future for the children, for, our teenagers. And it's something that we are very passionate about. So we're very excited that you're here and that we can help to facilitate this AI movement, or in some small way that going forward, and this is why we're here and we're excited to be with you, Anne. So I think for me, when AI did, once AI came on the scene, which was, a number of years, and it started to progress rapidly, the question that on everyone's minds is like, oh, so how is that going to, children are using AI to sort of answer questions and look into doing research. But is it their own work, So that topic also comes into how do you feel about that when it comes to using AI as an educational tool as well as...
Okay. Well, I mean, fundamentally, going back to the workload issue, yes, it's about children in the end, but we have to look at how we support our adults in the classroom to make their jobs easier. And it could be through looking at systems around lesson planning, around research, around all the administrative things that take up so much time during the day, but also in the evening. So releasing staff time and therefore benefiting their work well-being, I think is a key step forward. If we then look at the children, my philosophy is that we cannot see education in the same way that we were taught. And, I'm old enough to have been around when things like whiteboards, iPads, tablets, all of those things came into schools. And you generally find there are those schools that are ahead and will embrace. But what you'll also find are some people who will say, well, why do we have to do this? Why is it necessary? But AI is catching up. And so with that leadership space, we've got to think about, well, how can a child use it? What's the lessons to be learnt around how they use AI? And do we as schools have a responsibility to be teaching them those lessons? So, for example, the last podcast that I put out was about AI hallucinations. Hallucinations, i.e., does AI always tell the truth?
Yes.
And it's acknowledged that it doesn't. So, we could have children that are using AI for homework, for example, that are basically scoping out things that are not right. So we have to teach them to think critically. We have to teach them to work in groups, to dissect what AI is throwing out in their area. Things like making life a little bit easier in revising for exams. AI can be used for that. In terms of looking at how children learn from the scopes of those that have particular needs right through to those that perhaps are excelling more quickly. How can AI support those students at the very top? But also, how can it support those that need that extra support? And AI can do all that if we look in the right areas. So we've got stuff around admin naturally, but there are also things like curriculum, assessment, exams, fundamental areas that we can support. But there is also one other thing. Again, if you ask leadership what is high profile at the moment, we know that since the pandemic, some students have struggled to get back into school. So there is quite an issue around attendance in school. And if you think about the predictive side of AI, how do we catch a child before they fall into a pattern of bad attendance? Instead of using human time to be looking at percentages and all of the characteristics, we can use AI in a very agile way to predict this is a child that you need to be keeping an eye on, because in our prediction, it's a possibility that they will become either a school refuser or someone with an attendance problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of the education landscape, what are some of the structural challenges schools are facing today, whether it's funding, infrastructure, or change management?
I fundamentally see 3 or 4 areas, really. The first one has to be around funding. And we know, not globally, but if we just stick to the UK, for example, we know that there is pressure in terms of funding the public sector. We know that there is pressure in funding the pay award. So schools are looking for ways that they can save money all the time.
Right.
So we shouldn't really see AI as an expense, and I'll explore that in a moment. We can see it as a way of saving money, and I think that's the way we've got to look at it. So the whole thing about funding being a pressure point, how can AI support us in releasing that pressure? The second area, of course, is around workforce pressures. We've touched on some of those already in terms of pressures around workload, but also how do we make leadership more inviting for the profession? How can AI support with naturally coaching people into the profession and sustaining? And, I don't think we'll have time to touch on it, but there's a lot of work taking place at the moment in terms of AI and the coaching model. But one of the things I want to emphasize is that AI developments should always be around people. It should always be around the person. And as opposed to people seeing AI as something that sits apart, we've got to move AI in as a partner in what we're doing. The other challenges, of course, are just general ones around infrastructure. So if we are moving into a very AI technology-focused landscape, again, people may refer to funding, but we have got to ensure that, number one, school buildings are standing, and there's an issue around, infrastructure building-wise. So let's move through that for a moment. And once we've moved through that, we then say, well, what's the technology that's needed in order to provide excellence in learning? And that's excellence in learning both for the adults, and I'm going to add in here at the moment the parents and also the children. I just want to touch on the parents for a moment, because we've got to understand that we always say within schools, the partners are the children, the teachers and the parents.
Yeah.
And parents themselves are going to need an incredible amount of support, usually led by the school, can be led by the school when we've got big initiatives. So in whatever we are planning, don't forget that third person in the room and how they can support that journey also. So the challenges are around infrastructure, funding, but also things like how you would engage parents.
How you engage parents,
Yeah.
yes, because obviously with parents, they're pretty much old school. Sometimes they're not into this AI, they're not grasping it, they don't understand. Right. It's just, I think, especially with technology, so it is educating them as well as the students and also to encourage them that it's okay. AI is nothing to be afraid of. Let's embrace AI, because I know that there's some backlash. It's like, oh no, we can't use AI. It's not our way of thinking, and it. So I do feel that, yes, engaging with the parents, that's really important.
And just as anecdotally, working with professionals, I won't mention any names, but I have one CEO that I'm working with at the moment, and his take on things was, I know nothing about AI, and he is in charge of a lot of schools.
Yeah.
I know nothing about AI. I thought I would retire before it came in. He jokes. Yeah. But as I'm not retiring right now, let me learn. So, we've got to embrace it from wherever we are. And with parents, in the same way that schools are asked to what we call safeguard our children against social media and other things, I think AI needs to be brought to the fore, because when safeguarding came in, we were training our parents around social media use, about taking care of children, lots of things that would happen outside the gate. Let me just put it like that. And I think with AI, I've suggested to people that perhaps newsletters or something like that, or drop-in or coffee mornings, where parents can engage without feeling vulnerable about, I don't know anything about this, please help me. Because that's what we're there for, and that's what we thrive on.
And there's many tools now, like ChatGPT, that they could start to use.
That's right.
Some of the questions that you ask, it's very quick. Yeah. So I think, you could do, little workshops with parents and say, oh, did you know you could ask this question? And it will give you in seconds. Yeah. And if, say, for example, they like cooking, you could get a whole, right. And then introduce them that way in terms of, so Absolutely. They can get comfortable.
Yeah.
So at NETS, one of the things that we are increasingly seeing is how important how how important stable, secure, and smart IT infrastructure is for schools to thrive. So, from your experience, what role does good IT support play in a school's day-to-day success?
I don't think that this can be underestimated. I really can't, because I've mentioned that there's a lot of pressure in the system, and teachers, leaders come to school knowing that they can deliver on the day, and I say deliver because that's a bit of a strange word, but deliver on the day. Yeah. They want to know that things are working. And I was lucky enough to work with one of the colleagues here that who was the sort of IT provider within our institution. So when you work with somebody closely, you know that you're going to come in the room, in the office, things are going to be working. You know you're going to go into the classrooms, things are going to be working. You know you've scheduled your day. And we have those added extra pressures like Ofsted, for example, and we've had schools that have gone through Ofsted inspections when the IT has gone down. So you think, how on earth does one get through the day when you've got no, smart boards to be using and so forth? So when you look for an IT provider, you're looking for one who's going to back you up to the hilt to make sure that things are working on a Monday morning and things aren't down till a Wednesday. You're also looking for an IT provider where the staff are trained well, where the staff work with a certain values and certain ethics. And again, I've worked with IT providers that will say, look, Anne, we're not going to leave your school today until we get this right. And I think the third thing really for me would be around accessibility. We put a lot of money, schools put a lot of money into IT providers. And you want to know that if you have an issue, you're not number 140 on the list in terms of tickets. You want to know that there is somebody that you can call that's going to realise the need or the urgency of the matter and be able to deal with that. So it's about the personality of the company, it's about the reliability of the company, and it's about their response and accessibility when things perhaps don't go right.
So with having said that, Anne, why is the right technology partner so critical, especially in a post-pandemic hybrid learning world?
I think, first of all, we are looking for partners around scalability and reliability. I've already spoken about reliability, so let's look at scalability. We can't say that we know this is what AI is going to look like in the future. It's the unknown.
Yes.
But what we can do is plan as far ahead as possible. And I always challenge leaders to say, you've put a budget in place for this year. Does AI feature in that budget? Does staff professional development feature in that budget? So our technology partners can support with that scaling up, but also in terms of the professional development aspect. I think also technology partners have to lead on things around security and safeguarding, because if you ask any school, that's the number one thing they will always say. Yes. Every staff needs to know about safeguarding. So we're talking safeguarding and security of pupil data, of training staff what they should be putting in the system, but also what the AI services are putting in themselves. So how can we safeguard our pupil data but still train AI on what it needs to know? And I think our IT providers really do need to take a lead on that, in also knowing about what laws are surrounding that particular thing. I think the third area really is around ensuring that as we scale, that the system continues to be user friendly. And that's the only way that you're going to take people with you. We are learning new things every day. We are change agents. We are agents of change. But if you throw something at staff, if you throw something at leaders, sometimes they just switch off. And I saw that for myself at a particular conference where a leader had brought her team to this conference, and there were a lot of ed tech companies selling and so forth. And all her team were coming back to her and saying, we really need to buy this, or we really need to buy this. And she just stood there and said, just stop for a moment. And she did the right thing, because first of all, she linked back to vision. First of all, what's the vision of how we want our school to be? And secondly, how does AI fit into that vision? And how is it going to support us moving forward as an organisation? So it's about pacing your development and ensuring that your partner, your service partner, your IT service partner, is supporting you on that journey in terms of what will be right now and what you may want to consider in the future. I think the last area that I would probably suggest that we look at in terms of an IT service partner is how much are they innovating? How much are they innovating, but innovating with equity at the heart of what they're doing? And I'll give you an example. I always say to my leaders, if you are looking to bring a service in, challenge them with questions about equity, challenge them with questions about ethics. We know that some of AI it leans towards certain biases. Challenge the company to say, we need this, we think, but can you specify how you have considered ethical means within the system? And I'll, again, examples, things like facial recognition. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't recognize ethnic faces as well as other faces. So we buy into systems and we want systems to be right for everybody. So scaling up, fundamentally financing a system that's innovative for the future, getting that support that you need, but also thinking ethically, does this service provider work in an ethical way rather than being just some big organisation that doesn't know our personal needs.
And that's why we're so excited to share the news that we've joined hands in partnership with 𝘳𝘮𝘳𝘁, one of London's most respected managed services providers in the education space. And together we're bringing smart, scalable IT and digital solutions into schools and colleges across the UK with the aim of making technology more accessible, reliable and impactful in education. And I know they've been around since 2006, working with schools and currently working with MATs in London and branching out to the UK in the foreseeable future. Why do you think partnerships like this matter in moving the needle for schools?
I'm just so pleased that this partnership has been formed, and what a phenomenal partnership it's going to be. I've worked with 𝘳𝘮𝘳𝘁 for since about 2013. Wow, so I am party to the quality of provision that they provide to schools. I'm party to the quality of care that they provide to the schools, but also how they listen well and respond to changes in the IT world. What we say in schools is that we are future focused but child-centred. And what this means for an organisation like 𝘳𝘮𝘳𝘁 is that now that their influence will be more than just the UK, because obviously NETS International is international, and that means, or it provides the platform for them to service schools on a larger scale, to bring the expertise that they've fostered over several years to a wider audience. And in that, there's years of experience, there's agility, there's exploration, bringing across two fields, perhaps one that has not been in education before, but also the sort of communications aspect, and being able to streamline that. What we need in education are providers that do both. not two separate elements, but do streamline. When we don't have the time, let me put it this way, when we don't have the time to focus on simply the technology, partnering with somebody that just has the whole system there in place is going to be exceptional. And I look forward to seeing how this partnership develops. But certainly I am really keen and overjoyed that both those companies have got together.
Yeah, it's exciting times. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we can both do together.
Yes.
To improve and obviously give back to the school community. Yeah. So Anne, I've asked my team to give me some questions that they would like me to ask you, and it's a game that we're going to be playing, and it's whether you agree, disagree. It's like quick fire questions that I'm going to be asking.
Do I need to get my lawyer?
No. No, I don't. No, not at all. But it will be a fun, quick round. So, and I always like to get questions from the team because beforehand,
yes.
They always have things to say and to ask. So I'll say a statement and you say agree or disagree. Okay.
Only two options?
You can feel free to explain if you like.
Okay.
But AI will transform school leadership. Do you agree?
Totally agree.
Totally agree. Would you like to comment or?
Once the use of AI is utilised, once leaders see their responsibility in leading with AI, which is the title of my book, I think the potential will be shown, and we will begin to understand how it can enhance the focus of our work, which is the young people.
Fantastic. Most school IT issues are avoidable.
Wow. False.
Disagree.
I disagree. I think leaders need a greater understanding of the longevity of particularly equipment and systems, and continue to build into their budgets rather than shiny, polished rooms and materials. We've always got to keep an eye on what's coming next and make sure that there is income in the budget, money in the budget to cater for that.
Okay, and then I have another one that's a very interesting question. Teachers are undertrained in tech. Agree or disagree?
Can I go down the middle with this one, please?
Oh, we'll have to say, for the audience, shall we say an agree? And then you can elaborate on why you said.
Agree.
Agree.
And let me tell you why.
Okay.
So we have a system which are called NPQs, National Professional Qualifications.
Yeah. And
they exist at all levels of the profession. I'm also doing work with teacher training places at the moment. And technology is built into what new teachers are expected to do. It's not assessed. So back in the day, they used to have assessments in English, they used to have assessments in maths, and you would expect a bit of technology. I think I would be inclined to move it more as a core module in every single layer of leadership to ensure that leaders cannot get away from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
So, Anne, it's been such a pleasure having you today. Your insight, your expertise, your knowledge in talking about AI, which is, something that's dear to us, something that we know we cannot escape from. It is our future. But the knowledge that you have and what you can bring to the table in terms of with our schools, education, that's just phenomenal. And I really appreciate this discussion that you've come here today and taking, giving your time and energy to discuss something that's meaningful and how we can shape the future for our children in education, in AI and automation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation today, and I look forward to working more closely with you all in the future.
Great stuff.